Hey guys, welcome back to Skyview Aerial Productions, and today we are comparing the Sony a6000 to the Canon Rebel T6.
Welcome back to Skyview Aerial Production.
The Canon Rebel T6 and the Sony a6000 are completely opposite cameras, but they do have one thing in common. They are both Sony and Canon's budget cameras. Although they are budget cameras, that does not mean they do not perform well. The Canon Rebel T6 has detachable lenses and it's a DSLR. Plus, it can shoot 1080p. Well, the Sony a6000 can also shoot 1080p, but it can shoot 60 frames per second, while this can only shoot 30. I look at that as an advantage because I like to shoot B-roll. Now, like I said before, Canon has detachable lenses that you can put on the Canon Rebel T6. I own the 75-300. Now, these do have autofocus, and you can get zoom lenses, you can get almost any type of lens you want. Now, Sony, on the other hand, they also have lenses. Now, I prefer Canons, but it's based on opinion. Sony also does make very good lenses. Now, as you can see, Canon and Sony both make very good lenses for their camera. Although, like I said before, I do think Canon's E-lenses are a little bit better than Sony's. This is just my opinion. I think they're a little easier to put on the camera, and I think they're a little more durable, and their image stabilization is a lot better than Sony's. Now, in order to be my camera, a camera has to pass 5 tests. 1 is video quality, 1 is the photos, 3 is the audio, 4 is its low light performance, this is probably the biggest, and 5 is its ease of use. First up is the image quality that the camera makes. Now, just to start things off, the Sony a6000 shoots in 1080p 60 frames per second. That's as high as it can go. While the Canon Rebel T6 shoots in 1080p 30 frames per second. That is not as good for me, because then its 720p is 60 frames per second. So if I want to get nice smooth B-roll, I have to put this thing in 720p. That's a big disadvantage for me. Now let's take a look at some of the sample footage that I've produced with both of these cameras. As you can see, the Sony a6000's background is a little more blurred because it can shoot at a lower aperture, and it doesn't have as narrow field of view. Now, I both had these cameras shooting at 18mm, and even though they were both at 18, the Canon still had a narrower field of view. Plus, the blacks were all grainy. This Canon is not that great of a DSLR, it's a beginner, but it's still pretty good for video. The one disadvantage is that the blacks are grainy. Other than that though, I think that the Canon is still a very good video producing machine. Now, on the other hand, the Sony a6000 aced this test. I think it did really good all around. The one thing that I have to say is that the background was a little soft, and the foreground. It was just a little soft, and there wasn't as much color as what the Canon Rebel T6 produces. Now, a lot of people say this is because of Canon's color science, but Sony has a pretty good color science too. There's some videos that I've seen that show Sony's color science by Canon's, and I can't really tell the difference. If anything, I think that the Sony's looks better. But I do have to give this round to the Sony a6000 for having a better all-around image quality. But it was a close one. I think either of these would work. Both of these passed my test. Next up is the photo round. Both of these cameras do a very good job in the photo round. Looking at these photos, I do have 2 things that just kind of mess with my mind a little bit. Let's start off with the Sony a6000. First off, one of the flaws is that the mailbox in the photo is very blown out. You can't really see that much detail in it because the sun is hitting it so hard, and Sony is not doing that good of a job composing for that. Although, the good thing is with that is you can see a lot of detail in the shadows. Now, the foreground, though, isn't blown out, which that seems a little weird to me. Overall, I think the camera did a pretty good job. But, on the flip side, the Canon Rebel T6 also performed very, very well. It only had one minor flaw that wasn't really that much of a flaw. You couldn't see as much detail in the shadows with it. Now, that might just because, compared to the Sony a6000, Canon did a good job composing for the mailbox. That might just be because Sony has more detail in the shadows because it didn't compose for the mailbox, Well, Canon composed for the mailbox and didn't put as much detail in the shadows, but who knows? Overall, both of these cameras did very good, but if there was a winner, I'd have to say it goes to the DSLR. Now, the next thing that's up is audio. Audio is one of the most important things that keeps a viewer's attention. Whether you have good audio or not depends on your watch time. If you have a lot of watch time, that probably means that your audio is superior. If you don't, that means you might need to upgrade to a newer mic. Now, the thing with audio is if you have really bad screeching audio, a viewer will not want to see that because it hurts its ears. But if you have perfect, crispy audio, a viewer will want to see that audio and watch your video. Both of these cameras have around the same audio. They are both okay for a straight out of camera, but none of them are superior. What I had to do is I have a microphone running to my computer that I record off of, and then I had to match it in post. Now let's take a look at the audio test. Okay, this is the audio test on the a6000. I don't know how it is in comparison to the Canon Rebel T6, and this is the audio test on the Canon Rebel T6. Like I said before, I don't know how it is in comparison to the Sony a6000. And if I would have to guess, I'd have to say that the EOS is better. It's all kind of opinion. Let me know in the comments below which one you think sounds better. Now, as I'm looking at this audio, I notice one key thing that really separates these cameras. The Canon Rebel T6 does a good job of not over-volumating. I don't even know if that's a word, but let's go with it. The audio. It does not reduce the background noise. Well, on the other hand, the Sony a6000 reduces the back noise very, very well, but then its camera voice is not that great. It's very pitchy, doesn't sound that great. I do have to say the winner goes to the Canon Rebel T6 for better all-around audio. Now, for the fourth thing that a camera has to pass in order for it to be my camera is its low light performance. Canon does never really do a good job with low light performance on video. They always do a very good job of low light performance on photo. Well, Sony is kind of the other way around, but they still do a good job on photos. But on video, that's where they really exceed. Let's go take a look at the footage from the Sony and the Canon at a low light performance. This is the low light performance on the Canon EOS Rebel T6. I do not know how this looks right now. My guess is it's pretty grainy because it's not a pro DSLR. It's more of a beginner DSLR. And this is the low light performance on the Sony a6000. My guess is, just from what I saw, just a quick glimpse, this one looks much better than the Canon Rebel T6, but who knows. And I hope you guys enjoyed this low light performance. And comment down below, what do you think is more important? Canon's color science or low light performance? Now, as we look at that footage, we can see that the Sony a6000 knocks the big guy out of the park by a ton. The Canon Rebel T6 does not do a good job focusing at night, puts a lot of grain in the image, the blacks are oversaturated, it doesn't look that good. Well, on the other hand, the Sony a6000 is a beast in this category. There is no noise in the image, it's focused on my face perfectly, and everything is dead on. I think the Sony wins this category by a lot. Now, for the final category of the day is ease of use. Ease of use is a lot of people's big pet peeve about big DSLRs. DSLRs are not so easy to use. They have a lot of buttons, they're touchy. They're basically made for photo only. Mirrorless cameras are very simple. I was actually surprised when I found out that my Sony a6000 was not more complicated. There's not as many buttons as the Canon. There isn't as many settings as the Canon, and I just think it's all around better. The one thing that Sony does lack is a good system. Its system where you can change the settings is not that great. You have to really dig deep in to find the setting that you want. Well, Canon, on the other hand, does a very good job in its menu. But overall, in this category, it is a close one, but I do have to give it to the Sony a6000 for the best beginner ease of use. Now, in the end, these are both very good cameras. They just exceed in different parts. Overall, the Sony wins 3-2. I do like this guy though. This is very good at photography. I use this for photography while I use my Sony for videography. It all really depends on what you need. If you're a beginner photographer, I'd get the Canon. If you're in between and you want to be both, I'd get the Sony. If you're a videographer, I'd get the Sony. So overall, I think Sony does make a little bit better budget-friendly camera than Canon, although Canon's camera is still not a bad camera to purchase. It all really depends on what you need. And that is it. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you liked it, make sure to comment, like, and subscribe, and let me know what you want to see next. Don't forget to push that notifications button so you don't miss out on any more uploads. Thanks for watching.